Hi, and welcome to Against the Grain. We know that everyone lives for something, and we believe that the most meaningful, most satisfying way to live is to live for Jesus. When we look at the life and teaching of Jesus, one of the things that we notice is that he lived different than the culture around him. He lived against the grain. So as followers of Jesus, we also should be living against the grain. When we look at our culture around us, one of the things that we notice is this sense of apathy. Seems like we waffle between apathy and outrage. But oftentimes as we look around, we see people who are just apathetic. We see people who are just going through life. But when we look at Jesus, we see that he lived with passion and purpose in his life. And so as followers of Jesus, we're to live the same way. When we hear the word faith, oftentimes what we think of is we think the opposite of faith is unbelief. But in reality, the opposite of faith is apathy. It's not caring. But as followers of Jesus, as people who, when we look at God, we see his majesty. We see his holiness. We see his beauty and how kind he is to us. And that should fill us with awe. And when we express that awe, that's what worship is. Well, oftentimes we think of worship as singing. And that's a part of it for sure. That's one way we express our awe. But we also express our awe in when we pray, when we have conversations with others. Anytime we are expressing awe, that is worship. It's kind of like a little kid who, when they see something amazing, they don't analyze it. They don't think about it. They just are excited. They're blown away by it and they express that. And that's how we want to live, with this awe. So how do we cultivate awe in our day-to-day lives? And that's what we're going to talk about today. As we go and get in this episode. So I'm excited. I've got Travis Muscatell here with us, and Travis is he's our worship pastor here at 121. And as we talk, not only is he worship pastor, but then also he has his wife, husband of Amanda, and then also two kids, Nash and Lydia. Travis, tell us just a little bit about yourself. Kind of, what else do we need to know, and kind of what gives you awe in life?
Yeah. So like you said, I'm worship minister here, and Amanda, my wife, and my son Nash is 10, and my daughter Lydia is 7. They give me a lot of awe, a lot of good awe, and a lot of parental awe.
Yeah.
Yeah, every day there's just something new as far as, with family, and as far as where I find my awe is just in God. In small things. I think when even driving down the road, just things I see, I'm like, that shouldn't happen, or that's crazy. Like, only God can do that. There's several times in my life I can look back and be like, okay, only God did that. So I don't know if that's kind of the answer you're looking for in that, or yeah, that's me in a nutshell as far as my family goes. Yeah, my wife and my two kids, and we live here locally, and we just have a really good time hanging out together. I love being outside. That's where I find my awe, outdoors, and so that's why I try and get my family outdoors, and they do the same things.
All right, tell us one thing that maybe most people don't know about you.
Oh, I wasn't ready for that one. I got to find something that's appropriate.
I'll throw you.
Yeah,
Try to throw you off a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so I tell this story. I don't know if you're going to edit this out or not, but this is one of those things where, like, two truths and a lie. It's always the truth that I worked at Starbucks for a while, and I'll try and make the story really short. There was an abandoned Ace Hardware, and it was abandoned for like 3 years, right? And the fence was knocked down. Anyways, the bunch of us worked at Starbucks, and it was across the street. We skated at the time, and we were like, man, let's go get some wood and build a ramp. This place has been empty for 3 years.
Yeah.
So we get back there, all of a sudden we see police, and we just take off running as teenagers do. And anyways, long story short, we all get arrested in Colleyville and get put in jail that night. And but they charged us with burglary, and we're going, we're like 19, have no clue what's going on, and spend the night in jail going, we didn't break into anything, we didn't steal anything. Yeah, maybe we trespassed, we shouldn't have done that. And we ran, got caught, but anyways, long story short, they had to find the owner of the property. It ended up being Jerry Jones. And so they called Jerry Jones, and he was like, what'd they do? And they're like, well, nothing. He's like, well, then let him out. So we got out of jail from Jerry Jones. And
that's awesome.
And we were just innocent teenagers walking somewhere we shouldn't have. But I don't know if that's something you were looking for or not. But
That is. I didn't know that about you. I hadn't heard that story
yes,
yet.
yeah. Believe it or not, that's the only time I've been arrested.
I love. It feels like every conversation, like you're just so real and raw that you're just kind of telling stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I also
it
just
is.
love how you live your life. Okay, so you're really good at musically. Like, how did you get into music and to leading worship, and kind of what was that path to look like to what you're doing now?
I mean, I've loved music even since I was a kid. I mean, in my grandma, my granddad's house, my mom has told stories like on their fireplace, little step, and I'd get up there like 3 years old and be like, 1, 2, 3, hit it, boys, with no band or anything.
I can see you doing that.
Yeah. And some things just don't
I'm
change.
picturing you
Yes.
as a little kid in your underwear up there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I've always loved music. I got involved. I mean, I was always like in musical things as a kid and stuff, but never had any training or coaching or anything. And I was in choir in junior high. Wanted to be in choir in high school, and they were like, your voice isn't really cut out for choir. Like, you should probably go do rock and roll or something. Kind of stick out like a sore thumb. And so I it's kind of part of my testimony also, but I didn't grow up in the church or anything like that. And so I stepped foot in the church for the first time in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And then that summer, I got saved at camp. But then we had a student worship team, and I walked in and there was like these students playing guitar, and I saw this guy and I got into it for totally the wrong reasons, as many people do.
Right.
But it's like all the girls loved this guy that played guitar, and I was like, I hate him, but I want to be him.
Yeah.
And so my stepmom played guitar. She grew up and she played in a country western band and everything. And so I told her, I went home and I was like, will you teach me how to play guitar? And so she was like, yeah. And so she just taught me basic chords, and I took lessons for a couple months, and I didn't enjoy it. I just wanted to learn to play the way I wanted to play. And so I just sat in my room every day and practiced. And then the guy that I hated, I was so jealous of, he's like, hey man, I heard you play guitar. Do you want to join the student worship team? I was going, what? Like, anyways, now he's my best friend of over 30 years, which is so funny that the way God works that in. So, but that's how I got involved. Just got involved. I got pulled in by my friends and got invited to be a part of a student worship team. And that's kind of how that journey began.
Yeah. And that's been quite a journey, because you've played a lot of different places besides just church. You play bars and all kinds of stuff. What's that? Yeah. What's that look like?
A lot of that was, I mean, just my journey as a believer, and just as growing up as a young man and into a man. It was having that passion of music, and then God gave me that gift, but then wanting that gift to be for me at some point, as you start doing that, you start getting attention. And as your early 20s, you're like, this is nice. I like this attention. This is cool. And then I was in a relationship and a marriage that failed. And so I just kind of went off the deep end there. And that's when I kind of walked away from my faith. And that's all I did was quit. I quit my job. And I just played music full time and traveled and played in bars and clubs. And it was not a good way to play music. And did that for several years. Then that's how I ended up meeting Amanda.
Yeah.
And then the story kind of changes to where I come back to God, and God really pulled me back in, and realized I played a gig one night, and I think it was just a bad gig. I was playing for me, and the attention wasn't on me, and it sent me into like a 3-day depression. I mean, I couldn't get out of bed, and it was just really bad. And that's when I felt God really call me back and be like, you're being an idiot. You're doing this for you. That's not why I gave you this. Like, that is for me. So I actually took 2 years and just didn't play music at all. And that's when God really called me back to like, this is what I want you to do. So that's when I was like, okay, I want to get back into leading worship again. So that's kind of how he pulled me back in through a lot of stupid mistakes and failures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
I love how patient God is with us, and he even as we start to run away, he just pulls us back in. So so cool to see.
Which we need it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very thankful too, because if not, I don't know what would be today.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a good chance I wouldn't be sitting here today if God didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I think he has a cool way to break us, like in our depression and stuff like that. Like there are people here that say like, you don't want me to pray for you, not me, but other people in the church, like, because I will pray that God breaks you in order for you to find him. And I've just kind of seen that throughout my life. Like, that's how God has worked in my life, is I'm going to break you to show you who I am. And that's where I've found, like, where I find awe.
Yeah.
Like, I find God in those awe moments when things are terrible, but there's that peace that goes beyond understanding. I'm like, okay, only God can get me through this.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love hearing that for you, and just knowing you, I can just see how God has worked on that. And so many people, nobody wants to go through. Nobody wants to be broken. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to go through hard things. But so often, that's what it takes. That's
Yeah.
what God has to use to take us where
Yeah. I
He
mean,
wants to take
music's
us.
always been an escape for me.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, growing up, I mean, I grew up in a broken home and stuff. And so, like, that was an escape for me. And then I tried using it for a different escape and to numb it with other things. Like when
Right.
you talk about apathy, it's like that's what it was. I didn't have faith. I mean, I grew up going back and forth 2 different houses every other day. It's like I could care less about what was going on. And so I just really trained myself to numb myself to any emotion, to any feelings. And so music was that escape. I was like, I can go out here and just scream and that
Yeah.
just feels good, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what I used it for. And then God was like, I found myself getting lost, like trying to escape so far that I got lost when it was like, it's different to escape in the Lord than to escape, into your own desires and stuff.
Yeah. So now you've pursued
Yeah.
worship and specifically through music.
Mhm.
So what is worship to you? Like how do you think about that? How does that as you plan worship services, as you sing, like how do you think about that? What is it to you?
Yeah, I think Louis Giglio a while back said, it's just a response. That's how we talk about it here. It's our joyful and response to what God has done and who He is. And so I kind of look at like praise and worship as two different things. They're kind of one and the same, but I think of worship as I'm worshiping God strictly for who He is. It's not anything He has done. It's just who He is, and that to me is what I would consider more worship.
Yeah.
That's the response. Like this is who you are, and even if you've done nothing for me, I don't need you to do anything for me. Like you are who you are, and that alone is enough for me to fall down and worship you. Praise to me is more like thank you for what you've done, and so.
Right.
So we do both of those. When we sing, we sing songs that are vertical or horizontal. People will give those terms. Horizontal songs about God, vertical songs to God. And so
Okay.
there's kind of different ways, but that's what worship is to me. It's not, like you said, it's not just music. It's a response. This is who God is, and I can respond to that, and then I also respond in different ways for things that He has done. And like I said, music for me just happened to be one way that I responded.
Yeah.
And I think it's all throughout Scripture. Like that I don't know who the first person that ever sang was. I'm sure that was a hilarious moment.
Yeah.
Just this sound comes out, and you're like, I don't know what that was, but it was a response to something, right?
Sure.
And somewhere somebody was like, that's beautiful, and like and that's what God put in us, and it's just something that at some point somebody couldn't control it and they just came out, right? And that's what music was for me. It's like I don't know what to do with this, and it just kind of comes out. And so that's to me, that's my response to who God is and what He's done in worship.
I love that. So when you as you prepare to lead others in worship, so it's one thing to worship, it's another thing to be leading others into that space.
Yeah.
What are things that you do to kind of prepare your heart to kind of cultivate that awe in yourself?
Really, I mean, the first thing I have to do is really just spend some serious time in confession and repentance. I've got a
Well,
lot.
why don't we do that right now? Why don't you just kind of
Yeah, my
confess?
biggest. Yeah. This is gonna be a long episode.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, because it is. There's so many times I will get up and be like, why am I here? There's no reason for me to be up here at all. Like I do not deserve to be up there. But then if we're honest with ourselves, like none of us deserve to be anywhere in that kind of capacity. And so I just really have like one thing, especially this last year, it's always looked different, depending on what kind of season you're in or what's going on. But this past year has been a really big year in humility for me. And it's been really cool. Like God has really shown me who I am and who He is, and then who I'm not, but who He still is. And so that to me, that before I do anything, that's really what I have to get that straight. I got to get my head right. I got to get my heart right and just be like, I am who I am in You, because if not, I know who I am not. And that is not a good place to be. You know what I mean? So, I personally, for me, I started getting my heart right, just confession and repentance, and be like, if there's anything in me that is causing me to not abandon myself to worship You, like I'll lay that at the feet, and I'm just grateful the cross can handle that, And so that's really where I start to prepare myself, and then as far every week's different as far as what we're doing for a service or whatever. But as far as just worship, I really try to just encourage our team members. That to me, like, we have so many volunteers, and a lot of people have the same question I do, like, why am I doing that? And it's like, there's nothing we need to do. It's been done for us. God gave each one of us a gift, and if you're on the worship team, He gave you a gift of music, and so and there's a lot of self-doubt, like in any kind of creative thing or artistic kind of thing. It's really easy to have self-doubt because you're constantly being judged and critiqued nonstop, and so it's easy to question yourself or your ability. And so I try and encourage everybody, like, hey, God chose you to be here this Sunday for this reason. And here's why I'm thankful you're on stage or a part of this team this week. God gave you this joy, or the way you express yourself, or just your ability to play multiple instruments and encourage our team. And that starts, on Monday. So to me, Sunday is worship-wise, music-wise, it's really just a reflection of what we've done Monday through Saturday. So my goal is to try and get everybody ready the best that I can to spiritually, whether it's text messages, hey, here's what we're doing this week, here's where we're going, here's the songs, or why we're singing the songs.
Yeah.
But most of all, like, what do you need? Like, I don't care. I mean, what we're doing musically, what do you need spiritually? Because if we're good spiritually, that's just going to flow out on Sundays. And so, to me, the music thing is one thing. I'm not the most musically trained person in the world, which is why I always have a lot of doubt, like, why am I here? But I'm like...
But you do have one of the coolest voices I've ever heard, so.
Thanks. But to me, it's like, I love Jesus, and I love what He has done for me. And the only way I know how I can express it in a way that makes sense is music. And to me, it's like, I just want other people to have that as well, and to lead people to that place where they can have that experience, to where whatever gift He's given them, that's their response. And so I don't know that I have a good answer, like, how do I prepare? It's different for each band, each person, each, volunteer, and each week.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, there's Sunday weeks I'm like, my preparation is totally different because I may have stuff going on. That's hard, So
yeah. So you mentioned leading others. As you think about leading others, how do you lead others into awe? How do you lead others to kind of into that awe, to kind of pull that worship out of them? What are different things that you think through, or are there ways that you kind of try and go about that?
It's hard because it's different when you're the one preparing for this all week.
Yeah.
Because you see this or you hear this song and you're going...
Everybody else is just showing up.
Yeah. And so you've put in the work all week, and you have this vision of what this could look like, and you're going, this is going to be that moment where people just erupt. And then sometimes you look out and they're looking at you going, what happened? What did I do wrong? And it's like, and it's not me. And that's the thing, is there's nothing else that we can do for people to have an encounter with God. All we can do is try and lead them there. So I guess to answer your question is, we're just very intentional in the way we pray. I don't know what better way to prepare people for an awe moment or into awe than just to pray for barriers to be broken down. On Sunday mornings, we try and get the worship team together as much as we can, and we gather around the worship center, and we'll pray just over the worship center for the people that come in. Every Sunday we pray that if there's anything for us that's causing us not to lead well, because obviously, like, what we want to be doing on the stage is, like, we're the lead worshipers, right? Not just worship leaders, we're the lead worshipers. But we want to have true, authentic worship, what we're doing, but we also want to demonstrate, like, this is what this looks like. And so, because a lot of people, I've had so many guys be like, I almost raised my hands, but I wasn't sure. And I'm like, dude, I get it. Like, I spent so many years just holding on to the back seat of my chair, and I just pray for surrender. To me, like, that's when I have the most awe moments of the God, is when I am less and He is more. And so I just pray that people are surrendered, that hearts are open to receive what He has. And in music, it's just practicing well and preparing well, but really just, I try and think of songs, and maybe this is a question I might be getting ahead, but when you said how do you prepare well for the awe, it's like, well, what are the songs we're singing? Do these songs talk about the awe of the awesomeness of God? Yeah. And if we're not doing that, I don't know that we could lead people into that. You know what I mean? So it's making God big. Yeah. Making God big is the only way that I know we can do that.
Right. That'd be another definition of worship, right? It's magnifying Him.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Okay. So I struggle a lot because I'm not, like I tell people all the time, I don't really do emotion. Right. Yeah. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, and I'm really starting to kind of, okay, that's not a good thing. Like that really is not okay. And so a lot of, what we're doing is kind of, there's some emotional response to what God has done.
Mhm.
So, like, what part does emotion play as you kind of think through worship, as you think about your own worship or leading others or anything else? What's the emotional component to that?
Yep. I think music is just emotional as it is. I mean, it
Sure.
is written to be emotional. That's why there's so many different genres and people like for me, like I spent, you talk about apathy. I spent so many years not being emotional and just numbing myself, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be just spiritually, emotionally, whether it be drugs, alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
girl, whatever it was, like numb myself to anything that I could feel. And then through, um, really what I mean, so we talk about like my kids, but like our second son Dean, he passed away at 20. He was stillborn at 27 weeks, and to me, like that was the biggest awe moment I've had with God, like holding my son who's not alive in my arms but is alive in heaven, and it was like knowing that the Father's holding him at the exact same time, and it was like, to me, I've never felt a peace like that,
Wow.
and to me, like only God can do that, right? Like there's like to me, there's a quote that somebody said like, how could somebody sit at kneel at the bedside of a dying child and believe in God? And the response for me is like, how could you not?
Mm.
Like, how could you sit there and not believe in God? And so, I know it's kind of going off on a different tangent,
No,
but
it's
to me,
great. That's important.
that's where God really started stirring a lot more emotions in me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and obviously when Nash was born, that brought out a whole new thing. But it's really just letting go of myself, because I think most of the emotions that I've had are more anger, depression, anxiety, much way outweigh joy, happiness, that kind of stuff. Until I started like learning, okay, I feel these things. And so like to say I don't do emotions, like I did emotion, I just hit it very well.
Yeah.
And so, but I think when it comes to worship, so God calls us to worship in spirit and truth. And I think those are two different things. So I think music is emotional. There's, like we go to the gym, we're probably not listening to a lot of opera. We go to the gym, you want to listen to either some metal or rock or, whatever. Whatever it is for you that motivates you.
Mm-hmm.
We're depressed or upset, we like sad music, or, we miss our dog, we listen to country music or whatever it is. But, when we be uplifted, I listen to worship music.
Yeah.
If I'm angry, worship music is the best thing I can listen to.
Yeah.
Like, I used to want to go out in the garage and hit something or put on, something hard, but I'm like, now I listen to worship music. I'm like, and when we turn our focus to that, the other things kind of disappear.
Yeah.
But when God calls us to worship in spirit and truth, I think the spirit part is the musical part, the emotional part. Like, there's a reason God created music, and
Sure.
He created us to make this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And that out of our emotions is when you're right. Like, I can't, if I'm not feeling something, it's hard to go try and write a song or
Yeah.
even play something. And so, yeah, music definitely tugs on the heartstrings. And I think that's the spiritual part of it. And I think the truth part is what we're singing, the scripture,
Right.
those things. So when He calls us to worship in spirit and truth, I think those things are designed to be done together. It's the emotion is tied with the truth that we're singing, and that's a beautiful thing. When we separate those two things, though, I think it's dangerous, because then we're just worshiping with emotion, and we're told like the heart's deceitful. Like there's a lot of songs that are designed to sound a certain way to tug on our emotions, but there's not truth in it, or vice versa. I can listen to a song that I can read these lyrics, and they're beautiful lyrics, but sometimes without hearing the music, I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And so to me, like those things have to go hand in hand. And when they're separated, it's not, I don't think that's true worship. I think it's truth.
Right.
And there can be emotion, but when they're not together, I think it can not always, but can
Sure.
lead to a dangerous place.
Sure.
Because like I said,
yeah.
I think there's a lot of songs, even unfortunately out of worship songs that are out
Yeah.
there today, that are designed just to stir up emotion.
Right.
And when to me, that just gets into a dangerous territory.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, so we talked a lot about worship as far as singing and leading, but how does that play out in other areas of your life? Like as that awe that you've cultivated or that God has stirred in you. Tell me how that kind of plays out in other parts of your life.
So when I say worship as a response, and in other ways, just the music. I mean, we were talking earlier. Like, I love reaching out to old friends, and I know that's weird, but to me, like I look at what God has done for me through other people and people that I didn't know. I mean, God rescued me through people that were not immediate family and were outside, people in the church and stuff like that. And so to me, that's one of my favorite things to do, is connect with old friends. Like I said, I haven't talked to you in 10 years. Man, you popped in my head. How's it going? And that's a rule I have. If somebody pops in my head, I send a text. Hey man, just thought about you. I don't know why. Hope everything is going well.
Yeah.
And that has led to so many different great spiritual conversations and ministry opportunities. And it's led to a lot of downfalls and stuff. But to me, that's one way, is just with people. I love, I made a joke the other day. It said I'm a people loving loner. You
Yeah.
know? But I am. And to me, like, I look at what God did in my life through people that had no reason to reach out to me, had no reason to be there for me. Like, dude, you're some punk kid, who's you're done. Like, you're gone. We'll throw you out to the world and just let you fend for yourself, kind of thing. Instead, I had people who were like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. How are things going? Not good. Let's go have coffee.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's what we're called to do. So,
Right.
and then obviously, time in the Word, that's a struggle for me. I'm not a big reader, and so, like, one of my things, I don't do resolutions, but my big year kind of word this year is like just discipline. Really trying to focus in on being more disciplined in my daily time with the Lord, because that is also what will flow out on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And really just doing that in a time that's not work related.
Yeah.
Trying to separate those things if you can. I don't know. It's hard to do in
Sure.
ministry, but yeah, and just being with my family. To me, I can't imagine a more worshipful thing to do than just be with my family and my kids and watch them laugh and watch my wife laugh. To me, like, I know that doesn't sound like it's worshipful, but like, that's a gift from God, and just to enjoy that.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's worshipful to enjoy the things that God has given us, and knowing that they're from Him and for Him, Right. And so, yeah, that's
Love that.
yeah.
Love that.
I just love meeting with people.
Yeah. Very cool. I love just hearing it just seems like all the time hearing different stories of you and how you had, interacted with someone from your past and being able to share the joy that you have in Christ with them. And I love hearing that. You're really intentional at that, I know. Okay, so what if someone came up to you and said, "Hey, I am just stuck in apathy," what would you tell them to kind of like help? What are ways that they could stir maybe that awe or that just kind of get out of that?
It's funny. I actually just had this conversation with our life group last night, and
Yeah.
it was in a text thread, and we were talking about like struggles, and I realized, like, I felt really convicted of how often somebody shares struggles or whatever, and I'm just like, oh man, that really stinks. I'm praying for you. And then, like, sometimes that's it. Like, do I actually go and pray for them?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Like, if we have to be honest with ourselves, like most of us do that. Like, oh man, it stinks. I'll pray for you. And it's such a convenient way to get ourselves out of their situation. And the same thing, what I found is people are like, what do you like? What brings you joy? What do you want to do? Instead of saying, well, that situation stinks, I'll pray for it and then leave it there. Like, that's what we're so good at because it's convenient. But how often do we say, what do you enjoy? Like, what do you like to do? Oh, you like to go camping? You like to go hunting? Hey, I know somebody who's got some land. Let's go in a couple weeks and go shoot or hunt or, whatever, go camp, whatever it is that you're into. To me, that's the thing, is it's asking the questions. It's getting to know somebody else. So if somebody is struggling with apathy, it's like, well, what do we do to get you out? Because like you said, apathy is like the lack of faith. So it's like, they don't care. Well, everybody cares about something. They just don't want to show it at the moment or whatever. So it's asking the questions like, why are you apathetic? Like, to me, like, I live in to me, my two big words are just hope and joy. Like, where do you find your hope? Where do you find your joy? Like, oh, okay, well, I find it in playing music in bars and clubs. Well, where is your hope and your joy in that? Like, is your joy that you're getting the attention? Is your hope to be famous? Like, because those two things probably not going to work,
Right.
They're not going to happen.
Right.
And so, but yeah, so I think that would be it. It's really focusing I have a really bad past of focusing on the negative.
Yeah.
And using the positive to contrast that instead of saying, man, forget the negative. Let's just focus on what's good and let's just go that way. Let's stop doing this. Let's just go that way.
Yeah.
So to me, that's kind of a new thing that God is really showing me, is stop comparing and contrasting. It's like, just go with the good stuff.
Yeah.
And, deal with what you need to in the bad stuff, but what you don't have to deal with, let it go and move on. So I think just pulling somebody, apathy is just a pit. It really is. And it's like quicksand, and you need somebody to pull you out for sure. Because if a friend of mine, Shane Pruitt, he's a pastor and a speaker now, and he has a really good quote. And he's like, if self is the problem, self can't be the solution. So if you've gotten yourself in quicksand, you're not getting yourself out. Somebody's got to come get you out.
That.
And we don't do that just by saying, sorry you're in quicksand. I'll
Right.
pray for you. You know,
Right.
it's like, no, we got to get in and get people out.
Right. I love what you said about just finding like what everybody's passionate about something. So,
Yeah.
so what are you passionate about? Where do you find joy?
Mhm.
And let's pull on that string and let's like why do you find joy in that? And as you kind of keep digging in that, it points you back to God. I mean, God is the creator of everything. And so what is it about that God has made in that that stirs your soul
Yeah,
in that?
yeah.
I think that's awesome. Very good. All right. Well, as we're talking about just kind of apathy and a sense of awe and generating awe, is there anything else that you've kind of thought of that might be helpful for people as they're thinking through stirring awe and living a life of worship?
Yeah, I don't. You know, it's one thing. It's funny because we are talking about like I'm maybe not. This is just music related, but like I said, a gentleman is like, man, I almost raised my hand, and I felt the same way for so long, and I was like, and then until I started doing that, and that's, I mean, it's not for everyone. I get like you worship, like we're not one of those churches and not one of those leaders. Like it has to look like this, or you have to do this or that, or it's not authentic. No, like Ross has said before, like their act of worship might have just been get out of bed today. That's
Right.
all. It took everything they had just to get out of bed and be here, and that's their act of worship. So we don't know what people are walking the doors with, but I would just say, man, if there's something for me, that's what it took. Just okay, let go of myself,
Yeah.
and just raise my hands, and because it's just an act of surrender. And I realized the longer I held on to the back of that chair in front of me, I was holding on to sin. I was holding on to, I was just holding on. I wouldn't let go. It was causing. I was like, oh man, I'm a worship leader. Why can I not worship unless I'm leading? To me, that was a weird thing. And so I'd go to these worship concerts, or or even just any kind of worship event, and I would just sit there and I would sing the songs with my hands on the back, and I was like, and something happened when I let go, and I was like, that's when I really found the awe in God. And it was just a simple thing like that of just like, I can't do this. Like you are who you are, and I don't know. It's just a weird thing. So I think to me, when you ask like, how do you get somebody there? Like, it's just letting go of yourself. Like you said, I don't do emotion. Well, like, okay, try it. I don't know how.
Sure.
It's different for everyone.
Sure.
But so yeah,
Try something.
I don't know if that answered your
Yeah,
your
no, I
question
think
or
that's
not, but
fantastic
it's-
because I think for any of us, not just in singing and
Yeah.
that aspect of worship, but in any of our lives. I mean, sometimes if we just got to take a risk.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage just step out of your comfort zone. And I think you said the key word. It's how'd you say it? Get out of yourself, right?
Yeah, or I mean, you're just locked in. Like I said, I got a wall that built
Yeah.
up, and for some reason, there's times I just can't break it down. I feel like I'm not worthy
Yeah.
to worship. There are times I'm like, man, I have screwed up so bad this week. Like I'm not even worthy to be in this room to sing to you.
Yeah.
And then and God just meets you in beautiful times. He's like, no, you're not, but through me you can.
Right.
And that's when you're like, okay, then I surrender.
Right.
And then when you give up and God takes over, like it is an awe moment, and you're going. And we have those moments every Sunday. Like it's amazing. Like that's all the preparation, or whatever it is that happens throughout the week. Like it doesn't matter when we have that moment. Like,
Yeah.
and so for me, like that was just me. It was like, okay, I'm struggling, really opening up in worship and building up this wall. And it was just a simple act of raising my hands and just letting go.
Yeah.
And for me, that might have just been letting go of my guitar. My guitar is my comfort blanket.
Sure.
Like I don't know what to do with my hands if I don't
Right.
have my guitar. So.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, just let go. And it was like, and that's when I just felt God really move in.
I think that's huge because I think it's hard to feel awe when you're trying to control everything. But as you start to let go, as you surrender is the word you use. I think that's beautiful. As we surrender different parts of our life, as we surrender ourselves, then all of a sudden we realize, okay, I don't have to control everything. He's got it.
Yeah.
And we could just start to feel that awe and that joy in him that comes out.
And
so
it's
many ways.
restful. I mean, it
is.
is so restful. Like you said, I'm a control freak. It's a character flaw of mine. I mean, I'm a man. I love to be in control of things. I want to fix things, but then just beyond that, like I'm just a control freak. And so there's something about letting go, be like, okay, I can just rest in you, and knowing like I don't have control over this, and then like it is restful to be able to do that.
I can't tell you. You talked about raising your hands. I can't tell you how many times I've kind of wrestled with that while we're singing, and I've been like, well, if I do that, I'm just going to feel awkward and everything else, and so I don't. And then what do? I feel awkward the whole time because I'm like, oh, maybe I should be doing that or whatever else, as opposed to. And then when I do, it's just like, okay, there's freedom. Like, okay. yeah, just to get outside of myself and forget about anything else going on.
Yeah, and that may not be it for you. It may be something different. You know,
sure.
everybody's different. That's just an example I've had of a guy who came to me. He's like, I was so close. I was like, but you stopped yourself. You know, like you got in the way of letting God
Right.
have a moment with you. And
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we done that to
Sure.
ourselves?
And, okay, so we talk about in worship and raising our hands and that kind of stuff. That's one example.
Yeah.
But how many times in life are there just so many things like that where we're holding on so tightly and it's really stopping us from an intimacy, from an awe, from any of that kind of stuff. And if we just let go,
Yeah.
how much more joy we'd have, how much more we'd see God, and how much we'd be able to step into that.
Yeah. The more I hold on to stuff, the worse things tend to get. So.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. All right, well, I want to, as we kind of wrap up our time, I just want to read from Luke 5. So this is after Jesus heals a paralytic. Said, and amazement seized them all, and they glorified God and were filled with awe, saying, we have seen extraordinary things today. And I think that's just a good kind of place to, as we wrap up our time, to kind of think through what awe is and how we stir that. And it's just, they said, we've seen amazing things today. And oftentimes, we're not looking for those amazing things. And so how do we just open our eyes to that on a day-to-day basis and see those amazing things? And then to just, like we said, give up control, surrender, and just experience that awe and express it. And whatever that looks like for you, and how we live in awe. So this has been awesome, Travis.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. And here's what I want to encourage everyone to do is don't let the conversation stop here. Continue the conversation. So in your life group, have conversations about, like, what does awe look like for you? If you struggle with that, how do you stir awe in your own life? How can we help each other stir awe in that? So I just want to encourage you to keep pressing into that, to spend time with God and just ask Him. Spend time looking at who He is and let that stir an awe in you of who God is, so that you might then live a life of worship, a life that's of awe, and to live against the grain. Thanks, y'all.